Nosotros tenemos. It all started in my old forge in Ventura, California in the early 60s. It was a crude little shop, but we were making the world's best climbing equipment. You know, we were making stuff for ourselves, number one, and we happened to be on the kind of the cutting edge of climbing at the time. None of us wanted to be businessmen, that's for sure. Had to do something just to support our climbing habits, surfing habits. I hired kind of dirtbag friends who were climbers and surfers and stuff, and every time the surf come up, we'd all abandon the shop and go surfing. One day in 1968, my friend Doug Tompkins said, "Hey, let's go down to Patagonia and go climb Mount Fitzroy." I picked up a 16mm Bolex camera to record the trip. Loaded the car up with surfboards and climbing gear and took off for a 10,000-mile trip down south. I think from the time we decided to go, it was like 2 weeks before we went. We bought this old van and took off from Ventura. 1968, you gotta remember the Pan American Highway was pretty wild. It was dirt road from Mexico City all the way south. It was like being in Montana or Wyoming 100 years ago. Here we're in an area that's the size of the whole American West, with no people.
For those of us that grew up going out into the wilds of the world, where nature was basically untouched, we got into our souls a sense of beauty.
That trip had a big influence on both Doug and I. It kind of set the course for what we were going to do later in life. For me, it was the best trip of my life. Here's to now. Here's to now.
10 years ago, I found that old footage of Doug and Yvonne's trip to Patagonia back in 1968. It was like seeing everything I'd ever wanted to do in my life. From that point on, I promised myself that someday I'd find a way to do a trip like theirs. Years went by before I finally got my chance. I heard about a boat dock down in Mexico that was headed for Patagonia. They needed crew, and I needed a ride south. My name is Jeff Johnson. Look in any phone book and you'll find 10 of me. I grew up in Danville, California. You probably never heard of it, but it's a long way from the ocean and the mountains. When I was 8 years old, 2 things set me on the path that I'm still on. The first one was when my parents took me on a camping trip to Yosemite Valley. I remember looking through a telescope up at this huge granite wall and guys climbing thousands of feet up. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was like watching men walk on the moon. That same year I saw surfing for the first time, on TV. Wide World of Sports. I saw these guys riding massive walls of water. There were people out there putting themselves in places they weren't supposed to be. And I knew right then that I wanted to be there too.
Actually was thinking, said everything out loud, cause Epcot seats good arsenal that we don't worry about. Sitting on your doorstep waiting for you to come home or come out. Well, empty seats have a sound tonight that we don't care about. So here's to now. Here's to now.
Most of my life, I figured out ways to pick up and leave as the seasons change. I've been a dishwasher, a lifeguard, a flight attendant, whatever it took to pay for the next trip. In the last couple years, though, I found a real job. I've started planning some routes. I've spent a lot less time on the road. But I never forgot about my dream of seeing Patagonia with my own eyes. Sure, I could take my 2 weeks vacation time and just fly down to Patagonia. But I'll never get a chance like this one again. If I don't get on that boat, I know exactly what I'm going home to. If I do, my future is unwritten. I'm drawn to open country. It's where everything becomes clear, where the world makes the most sense. When I put myself out there, I always return with something new. A friend once told me, the best journeys answer questions that in the beginning you didn't even think to ask. For the first time in the South Pacific a few years ago. I told him about finding that old footage of his and wanting to get to Patagonia myself.
Jeff is the real thing. He's just total dirtbag. Can live out of his car, climbing in the valley. He's become a really good climber. Rides any kind of waves. He's just kind of hustling his way along so he can stay on the road. He reminded me a lot about how I used to be. I've met a lot of young people who ask me what books to read or films to watch. I think it's a good way to start, but there's no substitute for just going there.
Yvonne gave me a photo Doug had taken, a snapshot of a really remote coastline in Patagonia with a mountain called Corcovado. I've been carrying the photo around ever since, imagining myself on top of the ice-covered peak. For Yvonne and Doug, the best way to get down there was an old van. For me, it's turned out to be this 54-foot cutter called the Sea Bear. Alan, the captain, grew up in Patagonia, and he's taken his boat home. And me, I'm just lucky enough to hitch a ride. But I've never been on a boat for months at a time, and my sea legs aren't as solid as I thought. Stuff moving a lot, lots of movement. Kind of like the verge of nausea at all times. I'm at a major low point in my entire life. I haven't slept much. I'm trying to sleep right now. I'm doing great. I could vomit at any second. Ow.
Taking a trip for 6 months, get into the rhythm of it, it feels like you can just go on forever doing that. Climbing Everest is the ultimate and the opposite of that, because you get all these high-powered plastic surgeons and CEOs. You know, they pay $80,000 and they have Sherpas who put all the ladders in place and 8,000 feet of fixed ropes. And you get to a camp and you don't even have to lay out your sleeping bag. It's already laid out with a little chocolate mint on the top. And the whole purpose of climbing something like Everest is to affect some sort of spiritual and physical gain. But if you compromise the process, you're an asshole when you start out and you're an asshole when you get back.
Yvonne and Doug should be in Patagonia when I get there. They said I'd be welcome to a warm blanket and a hot meal on my way to Corcovado. Doug lives there full-time with his wife Chris, and Yvonne will be down there helping them with a big project they've been working on for almost 2 decades. Yvonne also told me the ice on Corcovado could be completely melted if I get down there any later than December, and that can make it really difficult to make the summit. Which brings up one minor detail. I've never climbed on ice before. Even if I had, you still need a crew for something like this. And I couldn't think of anyone better than my 2 friends, Timmy O'Neill and Keith Malloy.
And you can check it by going like this. It's going to be a little abrupt, but watch. See? See how it works like that?
Yeah.
So if the jugs were to mysteriously disintegrate, you would drop onto your grade and it would stop you instantly.
Yeah.
Timmy has climbed all over the world and put up record-breaking ascents in Yosemite Valley. He's climbed El Capitan in 3.5 hours. Even great climbers can take days. Keith quit the Pro Surf Tour about 6 years ago, and since then he's devoted himself to discovering new surf spots around the world. He's been chased by grizzlies in Canada and shot at by rebels in the Spice Islands. He's a man of few words, but if there's any surf down there, this guy will find it. We thought a good warm-up for Keith would be the North American Wall in El Capitan. Yvonne made the first ascent of this route back in 1964 when it was considered the most difficult rock climb in the world. It's still no cakewalk, which was interesting because Keith hadn't climbed much at all. Not to mention, the guy's afraid of heights.
First waves and then rocks. Seven comes to 3. Then you was plus C. 11, thank the heavens for their elasticity. And as for those who live and die for astronomy, you always didn't know when to stand or when to sit. Can't stand to stand, can't stand to sit. Who would want to know this?
We felt like climbing had no worth to society whatsoever. We didn't want to be part of the military-industrial complex. Life was pretty easy in the 60s. I mean, you could buy an automobile for $15 and live out of your automobile and camp out in Yosemite. And then here were these great walls that hadn't been climbed, that were as big and as smooth and as difficult as any walls in the world. The biggest one of all was the North American Wall on El Capitan. My friend Chuck Pratt, Royal Robbins, and Tom Frost and I, we made the first ascent over a period of 10 days. The wall overhangs the entire way, and it's questionable whether you could ever get down if you got halfway up and couldn't go any further. It's very similar to the first guys to ride really big waves like at Waimea. They didn't know whether they could get held down by one of these big waves to where they just die. Fear of the unknown is the greatest fear of all. But we just went for it.
Keith and Timmy couldn't make the long Pacific crossing, but hopefully they'll be meeting me down in Patagonia. I have the sunrise watch every morning. It's taken me a month to get into the mindset of long-distance sailing. As each day passes, I feel more detached from my scheduled life back home and more in rhythm with what surrounds me. This morning, during my watch, our 70-foot mast was ripped out and snapped like a twig. We were adrift in the middle of nowhere. Everything was down in the ocean, smashing against the hull. I thought it was obvious that we'd cut everything loose, but Alan had a different plan. He came up on deck with a knife in his hand and announced that everything would be coming back on board. 12 long hours later, we finally have the broken mast and everything else on board. It turned out a defective piece of rigging was to blame. But it was hard not to feel like I should have seen some early sign of this. Tonight, we are too tired to eat. We don't have enough fuel to get to mainland Chile, so our only option is to motor 400 miles to Rapa Nui, otherwise known as Easter Island.
The word adventure has just gotten overused. For me, adventure is when everything goes wrong. That's when the adventure starts.
A month and a half at sea, and we have finally limped in to the most remote island in the world, Rapa Nui. We'd only planned to be on Rapa Nui for a few days to resupply, but it looks like we're going to be here a lot longer than that. The first person I met is a girl named Makohe. I saw her teaching some kids to surf on the inside of the bay. She was born and raised here, and she's promised to show me around the island. It's nearly December, but for the first time, I'm not as worried about getting to Corcovado before the ice melts.
Coming to Rapa Nui is like going back to the past, and the people, they have like their history in their blood. My mom, she used to live in the time when the plane came over the island and dropped something in the ocean. The letters, supplies.
Lots changed, huh?
Yeah, many things. Yeah, when we were kids, like the entertainment, it was to watch the plane coming and going. And we'll sit in this like big tree that we had in the corner of my house somewhere, and we'll bring sandwiches, and we'll sit and we'll watch the plane come down for the whole time it was there.
That was the entertainment.
Yes.
Everybody watched.
Yeah.
So you're the first one on surfing Rapa Nui?
When I start surfing, there's only these guys in the water, and I've never seen a woman surfing in the water. And I told my brother, can I go there? He had so much fun. He said, no, it's only for men. And then one day I told him, oh, take me there, because I want to see. And I went, and it was fun. And I was the only woman for like a long time, maybe 10 years. When I'm in big cities, surrounded by cars or smog, or I just close my eyes and I think about Rapa Nui. The blue sky, the nice people, the ocean, the waves. I just think about that in my mind, and that makes me strong. Just having Rapa Nui. I don't want Rapa Nui to change. I want it to be like this.
Days have turned into weeks. When the sea is calm, we work on the boat. When it comes to life, I explore the volcanic coastline with Makohe. This island has taken us in like family.
You're like a roller coaster. You got the heavy metal wings. You could make a dead man scream. You're like a roller coaster.
As the weeks pass, I tell Makohe about my plan to climb Corcovado. Without hesitation, she asks if she can come along. At this point, I wonder if any of us will make it to Patagonia on the boat. But I promise her I'll ask Alan if we can squeeze one more person on board.
Roller coaster, it was the worst of times too. Because you lift me up so high. It's the most unbelievable ride.
Yvonne had told me about Jared Diamond's book, Collapse, and how Diamond presents Easter Island as a cautionary tale, a grim example of a society that exceeded its resources and suffered the consequences.
When the first Europeans set foot on Easter Island, 17-something, all the Moai were all standing upright. But as the population increased, the people started separating out into different little tribes, putting all their time and energy into, outdoing each other, making larger and larger moais. And that became the central focus of the entire society. Took priority over survival almost. And eventually they would cut down their entire forest to transport these giant carved stones. And this became such an obsession that they depleted the island's resources and led to tribal warfare, cannibalism, and eventually the population of the island of 30,000 was finally reduced down to 111 people. I've met Jared Diamond a few times and talked about his book, Collapse, and how all the different societies of the past that he studied that have collapsed. And then what does that mean for our society? And in the end, he really says that we're making all the same mistakes that all these other societies have made.
As the story of Easter Island goes, so goes the planet. It's a haunting thought, and I'm beginning to see these statues a little differently. I remember a quote I read one time from Aldous Huxley. It never resonated with me much until now. He wrote, "Men do not learn very much from the lessons of history, and that is the most important of all the lessons of history." There wasn't a harbor on the island big enough to get in to fix our mast, so we have to figure out how to do the repair while anchored offshore.
When the winter rains come pouring down on that new home of mine, will you think of me and wonder if I'm fine?
Alan got a hold of some old plans sailors have used for centuries when forced to remast while at sea. With no proper boat building equipment, these archaic blueprints are our only option.
Will I still be in your eyes and on your mind?
spent a month getting ready to hoist our mast, and we've used everything we can get our hands on. Our jury-rig mast, half the size of the original, weighs over 500 pounds. Stepping it to the deck in a rolling sea could be disastrous. One snapped line could set off a chain reaction, bringing everything down, taking us out with it. When the wind eases, we'll take our best shot. If we fail, it'll be the end of my trip.
When the winter rains come pouring down on that new home of mine, will I still be in your eyes and on your
Almost a month on Rapa Nui. Soon we will pull anchor and start our 2,300-mile crossing to Chile. I've always felt better on the move. As soon as I learned to walk, I was running. Today, though, I wouldn't mind staying here forever. It's hard to leave a place I really connect with. I tell myself I'll be back, but I know there's a good chance I never will. The good news is, that question I asked Alan about whether or not we had any extra space on the boat, well, we do. And Mokohe's coming with me to Corcovado.
You get to the top of a wall, there's nothing up there.
Lionel Terray, the great French climber, called it the conquistadors of the useless. Yeah, the end result is absolutely useless, but every time I travel, I learn something new, and hopefully I get to be a better person. When you've had a whole life in the outdoors, you realize that you have a sense of responsibility to protect these wild places.
After a 16-day crossing from Rapa Nui, we finally arrive in Chile. This marks the end of Alan's 10,000-mile voyage from Seattle. After years of being gone, it's good to see he's made it home. The Sea Bear will be months in port waiting for a new mast, so Mokohe and I decide to keep moving south. Mokohe has a friend from Pichilimu, a town south of here. He's a big wave rider named Ramon Navarro, and his roots here go back generations. She thinks he'll have a place for us to stay, and since his dad is a fisherman, he might have ideas in finding us another boat to Corcovado.
And my mom say my grandpa, he traded the land for one horse.
Right in here.
Yeah, all where my house it is and all around. 50 acres, maybe more, for one horse. My whole family come from here. So I have my roots in here, and I see a lot around the world what happened when the people coming with money and change everything. So we don't want to change the best and the more beautiful place we have in here. We're gonna fight for that, man.
Wouldn't you like to be out on the rolling sea with only the sky above for you? What if your friends were there Laugh at all your jokes and share sweet soft air with you that you're good. You know. Wouldn't you like to find yourself there sometime? Ducking when the bow swings your way. Whenever we make plans.
Getting good surf when I travel has always come secondary to the experience of just being on the road. But on our second day, we woke up to a big, perfect swell and no one in the water. The last wave I rode that day turned out to be the longest wave of my life. I'll never forget it.
Nothing escapes the rolling sea. Not the past nor you or me.
Gracias.
Ramon's parents watched the ocean change when big commercial fishing companies arrived and destroyed the local fisheries. His father taught him to work hard, live simply, and have a deep respect for the ocean.
Mira, esto es como después del mar y la tierra, por supuesto que es la fuente más importante que hay. Y se entretiene uno a saber algo de la tierra, porque igual la tierra te da, por lo menos no, que no sea para ganar plata, pero como se dice, para parar la olla. Aprende la experiencia que le puede transmitir a los más jóvenes del mar, ¿no? Que hay que tener respeto de las pesqueras que para nosotros no deberían existir, hombre. Esos son los enemigos de nosotros, que empezaron a llegar a las orillas eso y se los perdieron los cardúmenes que antes pillábamos. Los jureles salían a la orilla y todo, y ahora para comer jureles hay que ir a comprar jabón.
Ramon tells me that today, the biggest threat they face are the pulp mills popping up along the Chilean coast.
Pelear en contra de la celulosa es como pelear como un gigante. Nunca el gobierno ni la CONAMA nada ha tenido un proyecto grande de contaminación, ya sea celulosa, emisario submarino, de botar desechos al mar, minería y todo eso. Constitución en los años 50, creo, era como el balneario top de Chile. De un día para otro pusieron la celulosa y mataron todo. Mataron la pesca, mataron el pueblo, mataron el alma del pueblo. Y es muy triste porque está casi todo Chile contaminado hasta el día de hoy. Ahora en el sur de Chile, para peor, quieren hacer las termoeléctricas. Quieren hacer 6 represas. Toda la gente que en verdad vivió toda su vida y no respetan todas esas cosas, que es como un pescador que ha vivido toda su vida, llega un día para otro, le echan tan tremenda termoeléctrica y ya el pescador no tiene que vivir. Tiene que bancarse el humo, la contaminación del agua y los olores y los residuos que llevan por el aire. O sea, la gente tiene trabajo seguro en una industria, pero ¿a qué precio?
am in a city after 3 months at sea. This place has more people than Los Angeles. Right now, they're building a 3 million square foot shopping mall and an office tower that will be the tallest building on the continent. I find myself thinking about the collapse of Rapa Nui. Growth is inevitable, but can we maintain this momentum in the long term? Being here reminds me of my life back home, and I'm beginning to think about my own use of resources. Yvonne told me before I left that if we come through Santiago, we should visit his friend Juan Pablo Orrego. He's made it his life's work to stop urban sprawl in wild Chile and is fighting for the fading way of life of its indigenous people.
De cómo esa gente que está atrapada en las ciudades y tratar de crear un mundo más ecológico cuando no saben que eso es posible. Y un buen ejemplo de esto, que la gente se cierra, ¿no es cierto?, a los ecosistemas, es el Walkman o el MP3. Entonces al revés, te vas cerrando. No quieres respirar porque el aire está sucio, no quieres escuchar porque el ruido te agrede, no quieres mirar porque es feo. Y por eso que no entendemos la naturaleza, y por eso que no la amamos, y por eso que no la cuidamos. Porque no nos damos cuenta de que dependemos de ella psíquica y físicamente al 100%.
My old friend Keith Malloy has finally caught up with me. During our climb last year on El Capitan, he tore up his knee pretty bad and had to get surgery. On the mend, just before this trip, he caught one of the biggest waves of his life at Mavericks. I thought Timmy would be with him, but he's off climbing somewhere, so I hope he shows up before we get to Corcovado. We've come to a point where the road ends and the land begins to break apart, so we found a local boat to take us on the last leg to Patagonia. What I see here is the realization of a dream 40 years in the making. It all started with that trip Doug and Yvonne took here in 1968. This is Conservación Patagónica, and it stretches as far as the eye can see.
All my friends are getting older. I guess I must be too. Without their love and kindness, I don't know what I'll do. Oh, the wine bottle's half empty. The money's all been spent. We're a cross between our parents and hippies in a tent. Love calls just like wild birds. Well, it's another day. Spring wind blew my list of things to do away.
For the last 18 years, Doug and his wife Chris, along with Yvonne, have dedicated their lives to one of the largest private land conservation projects in the world, Conservación Patagónica. In the early 90s, Doug and Chris began raising money and using their own life savings to acquire large tracts of wild lands in Chile and Argentina. With the help of hundreds of passionate workers and volunteers, they've succeeded in protecting entire ecosystems and fostering sustainable farming and ranching programs. Added together, the amount of land they've put into conservation is bigger than Yellowstone National Park.
it's another day. Spring wind blew my list of things to do away.
I've arrived over a month late, but Yvonne and Doug are still here. I'd heard about their project, but I had no idea just how big it was. I've always thought of their trip here 40 years ago as an adventure, but now I realize it was a turning point.
We didn't change our lives overnight, but it had a big influence on me. For me, it was the best trip of my life. The whole history of Latin America is conquistadores. It's not much different from the States, but in the States, at least, we don't trust the government, and so we have a history of philanthropy. So Doug comes down here, and he says, I'm going to create a national park, and I'm going to give it back to you Chileans. And they're going, give me a break. People don't do that. You know, there has to be another reason.
I think first and foremost, people only protect those things they love. And you can't love something unless you inherently identify with that. That's certainly one of the reasons we ended up here. We have over 2 million acres of land put into conservation. And people think that's a lot of land, but really we're on the losing team here.
Douglas es un ecólogo profundo, no cabe la menor duda. Entonces Douglas, lo que ha hecho en Chile en el fondo, con esta creación de parque, él ha puesto en el tapete de discusión un tema que no estaba antes en Chile, simplemente, que es el tema de la conservación de la naturaleza y la relación justamente entre la conservación y el desarrollo de un país. La polémica que se ha dado y por qué Douglas ha tenido tantos adversarios y tantos críticos es porque él está provocando un efecto a nivel de paradigma.
First of all, you never know if you're doing the right thing. You gotta temper all your thinking that way. But the way I see it, with land conservation, say it this type, is that the risk of something negative coming from this seems to be rather small compared with taking an exploitive approach. If we make some errors, they're going to be rather small, because I'm sure we're making errors. The thing is to minimize those errors. I think it leaves open possibilities for future generations. It doesn't seem to be worth wasting a lot of energy on attempting to rewrite the past. I just realized that at least what I was doing was making a lot of stuff that nobody needed and pushing a consumerist society. So I went to do something else.
We're really, really different. We have the same viewpoint of the world and where it's gone. Different approach to it. He's more bothered probably about the end of society and mankind and stuff than I am, because he wants to do something about it. And I'm just kind of a laid-back Zen Buddhist. Just say, well, you know, I'll do what I can, and so be it.
Well, I'm going to tell my buddy Ivan that good Buddhist has to take his bodhisattva vows, which means that before self-enlightenment, one has to end the suffering in the world.
I never knew about Douglas before, and many people told me like he was a bad man because he bought all this land from Chile and he's taking all of the land for him. That's what people said, like now, because they don't know him, they don't know what he's doing. And for me to get to see that, he's an example that many people should follow. The solution, I think, it's in all of us, and I learned that in the South with Douglas. In a way, I saw the future of Rapa Nui too.
Here we're germinating from seeds, different species. First of all, we're just doing general restoration work and reforestation. Here we have they're from the Lago Negro. They have in different places. Since you can't find these species in regular nurseries in any numbers, we realized that we had to start our own tree nursery.
Blink hard enough, blink long enough, now you're asleep. Blink hard enough, blink long enough, now you're asleep.
During the Pinochet era, Chile awarded the water rights to the majority of their rivers to private enterprise, something that you would find in almost no other country. And the result of that is the Spanish energy company, Endesa, they have been rather methodically going through and establishing energy projects in the form of dams on rivers throughout Chile.
I saw what Chris was talking about up north on the Biobío River. This was once a fully functioning ecosystem where the river, forest, and people depended on one another. Juan Pablo says these dam projects are a symptom, but he also says the true cause of the problem is the development model. I'm thinking of those looming high-rises in Santiago, all lit up. I'm thinking of Ramon and his talk about the price tag of progress. I read that the American video game habit annually consumes as much power as the entire city of San Diego. So I'm also thinking about all those little things that add up to keep us comfortable or just amused. And I'm beginning to see the real consequences. Better late than never. Timmy O'Neill always comes through, and today, 2 days before we set off to Corcovado, he's arrived fresh from another long stint of ice climbing and running rivers.
All in here, there are big long beaches and so forth. I'd say not as much up in here. Especially there is where you get this exposed. And there's kind of the open ocean out of there, and you got these swells that are kind of unimpeded that are coming in there, and they hit right in this area here. And if you've got the boat, you can, depending on what kind of weather it is, hopefully you get some kind of storm. You get some storm swells.
You ever been in this area?
Yeah, you want to just trek along here. And you'll go comparatively fast up the gully, and then you'll get slowed down as it starts into the... And this gets up to about...
Doug is the only person who's ever stood on top of Corcovado. In the early 90s, he and a friend set out to do the first ascent. It took him 3 long days just to get to the base. When they reached the top of the glacier below the steep summit pitches, his climbing partner decided to turn back. So Doug climbed the rest of it alone, soloing the last few hundred feet of technical ice without a rope.
I must say, that's pretty wild what he did. You got to think about not only getting up, but you got to think about getting down. There's no anchors to rappel or anything like that. He had to down climb a lot of that. That was a great climb. It's never been repeated.
I've got blisters on my feet, blisters almost everything I need.
I love this old son of a bitch.
You know where I want to be right now? It's right here. Nowhere else, not in the future, not in the past. Look at that. Look at that fat guy.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Don't lose the juice.
oh man. Oh, this is what I've worked for all my life. I'm gonna be 70 next November. It's a good life, though. I tell you, no regrets. It's, just live for the moment.
We're making our final passage to Corcovado. And this morning, Yvonne surprised us all by hopping on the boat. He's been a climber for over 50 years. He just couldn't help it. Who knows? This could be his last big climb. We're 2 days out and the clouds have finally lifted from the mountain. After 5 months of travel, I'm finally here. It's hard for me to believe that in only a few days we will be up there, standing on the summit.
I think you're gonna like climbing.
Have you climbed with women before?
Oh, they're great climbers. Yeah, I think so.
Do you think I'll be a good climber?
Yeah. So you always want the ice axe on the uphill. That's the position of balance, okay? This is out of balance. It's easy to follow, right?
Keith has figured out that the Corcovado coast is more sheltered from swell than we had originally thought. Turns out this place needs a really specific swell direction from the south. But Keith got a report of some movement off Cape Horn, so he's opted to stay back and scour the coast for waves while the rest of us head up the river.
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now. What's that writing on your everything? It isn't anything at all. Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now. What's that writing on your shelf? The bathrooms and the bad motels. No one really cared for it at all. Not the gravity plant. Early in the morning, it pulls on down my surface. I wanna go back to sleep.
Now that we follow the river to its source, we have to cross the forest along 4 glacial lakes until we have a clear shot at the summit from the northeast side.
It all will fall right into place. As fruit drops, flesh insects, everything will fall right into place. When we die, some sink and some lake, but at least I don't see you float away. And all the spilled milk, sex and waste, it all will fall right into place.
We really underestimated this thing.
I think higher was the call. Well, I think even just a little higher, you get more valleys, but you get less jungle because thicker as you get towards the river.
Oh, yeah.
I would even think about going back.
Oh, God.
Mileage? I don't know. Maybe 3 miles, but hours? Seemingly endless.
This is the worst. This isn't climbing. But, you know, you could take a helicopter right to the snow line and climb it. That's cheating. I guess this is what makes the climb. This is crap.
We have rock hopped and bushwhacked 10 hours a day for the last few days. Sometimes we've been forced to backtrack and start all over again. We've been in this section of the new park for 3 days now. I've spent a lot of time in places I thought were wild, but I've never seen anything like this.
This is probably the craziest part of Chile that I've seen so far. I don't think very many humans have been up here. Whole thing on this ridge, not even touch snow.
On the ridge to the left of the
That
snow.
we're looking at, yeah.
Moving on snow will be easier than moving on really loose debris.
Yeah.
I mean, safer, essentially. But the problem is if you fall on snow, you slip down
You could die.
and die.
I know that snow kind of scares me a little bit.
Have you done much on it?
I've done none.
Zero?
Zero.
Why am I finding this out now?
I told you this a long time ago.
A long time ago. That was a long time ago. I forget. It's like Makohe has an excuse. She's from Rapa Nui. It's a really remote island in the middle of the Pacific. Your excuse is just ignorance, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's not an excuse,
But I
Jeff.
told you of my ignorance, so you're not ignorant of my ignorance.
That doesn't absolve you of it, though. That only makes me knowledgeable of your ignorance. What I'm saying, Jeff, is that this is serious.
We got to camp last night around dark and woke up at 2 a.m. to push for the summit. Now, after months, years really, I'm finally approaching my goal.
Do you still sing of the mountain bed we made of limbs and leaves? Do you still say that near the sky where the holly berry bleeds? You laughed as I covered you over with leaves, face, breast, hips, and thighs. You smiled and I said the leaves were just the color of your eyes.
Keith is somewhere below us searching the Corcovado coast for surf. From up here I see fresh swell on the horizon. Even if the surf is small, I know he's finding what he came down here for. Solitude.
Rosin smells and turpentine smells from eucalyptus and pine. Bitter taste of twigs we chewed but tangled advanced twine. Trees held us in on all four sides so thick we could not see. I could not see any wrong in you and you saw none in me. Your arm was brown against the ground, your cheeks part of the sky. Your fingers played with grassy moss as the moon did lie. Your stomach moved beneath your shirt, your knees hands were in the air. Feet played games with mountain roots as you lay thinking there. Below us the trees grew clumps of trees, raised families of trees, and they, as proud as we, tossed their heads in the wind and flung its seeds away. The sun was hot and the sun was bright down in the valley below. The people starved and hungry for life, so empty, come and go. Operate!
At the edge of the ice field, my worries have become a reality. Our delay in Rapa Nui has pushed this climb deeper into the southern hemisphere summer. There's no ice left on the summit, and from here the rock doesn't look solid. This climb's going to be a lot more dangerous than we thought.
It looks like we have 10 pitches of really rotten rock.
It looks like all the rocks are just gonna fall
It's
down.
gonna be a little sketchy.
Yeah.
You know, we gotta get the team up. You guys are the fastest. So you guys ought to just go for it. I'm happy. You sure? Yeah.
We rope up and prepare to make our move from solid ice to crumbling rock. We are unsafe here at best. Timmy and I hoped that the rock would get better as we got higher, but 3 hours later it felt like we were standing on the slanted roof of a high-rise with nothing but marbles under our boots. We were only 200 feet from the top, but we had to face the facts.
I'm not sure if we should continue because it seems literally like the next pitch above me is the worst unconsolidated nightmare I've ever seen. We've climbed about 500 feet of this bullshit, and the worst is right in front of me.
These loose boulders here hold, oh my lord, hold this block, which holds this block, which holds our equipment in the crack.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Rock. This is a good option. Hey, Jeff! It doesn't seem like it's worth risking my life, but we still have to get down!
I've come all this way, and I've given myself to this trip completely. I pictured myself on top of Corcovado, just like those guys I saw through a telescope in Yosemite Valley when I was a kid. And now I'm backing down, just a couple hundred feet short of the summit. I wouldn't take back anything I experienced along the way. But it's hard to shake it. Those last 2 pitches that went unclimbed.
Grab some grapes and leaves, man, you can never tell. When you have to change your face and hide your trophies well. Coming down the mountain, going to your home. The village has evacuated, now you gotta roam. Your feet could start to moan, and your eyes don't see too clear. The darkest dreams can come and shake your faith to steer. Remember the sun.
When those guys came back, they were pretty shot and pretty discouraged that they couldn't climb it. Any mountain at certain times is safe, and at other times it's super dangerous. We just happened to be there at the wrong time. Maybe Jeff and Tim were still bothered by the idea that they couldn't climb it. So it's kind of like the quest for the Holy Grail. Well, you know, who gives a shit what the Holy Grail is? It's the quest is what's important. The transformation is within yourself. That's what's important.
It's been nearly 6 months since I left home to climb Corcovado. But getting shut down doesn't mean my trip is over. The biggest project for Conservación Patagónica is even further south, and that is also where the dams are to be built. But the locals are getting more and more organized in their opposition. They have created a grassroots organization called Sin Represas, which means without dams. We've been seeing their signs and banners everywhere.
Remember the sun before you awake.
I'm humbled by this place and inspired by its people. The Gauchos work with Doug as park rangers, and I've asked Yvonne if we could spend our last few days here working with them.
Hay gente que está en Santiago o en diferentes ciudades, entonces ellos no tienen el cariño de eso. Nosotros lo tenemos. Entonces realmente, o sea, es muy fácil Chile, o sea, es una tierra sin cariño que tiene el Estado. Pero quien la quiere realmente que se crió acá y el que acudió, o sea, y vive de eso. Que muchas veces que la Patagonia prácticamente es un lugar que fácilmente venderlo, no sé, o regalarlo como se ha hecho.
The protest started with one gaucho in the little town of Cochrane. He heard about the power company's plan to build these dams on the Bacher and the Pascua River. So he decided to go to the Capitol and demand that the government stop this construction.
Word got out as he passed each farm and ranch, and in just 2 days, hundreds of riders had joined him.
Pedirle con todo corazón, como buen chileno, hagan un poquito más reflexión. Aquí venimos haciendo un sacrificio. Yo soy un huemul viejo de esos de la cordillera. Estamos relacionados con el huemul. No se olviden. Y a toda la juventud, a los chiquitos, que graben esto en la memoria y lo tomen con mucha responsabilidad. No se queden donde están.
days later, when they arrived at the steps of the power company in protest, there were over 300 riders.
La represa yo creo que está metido el gobierno, está aprobado, y eso es penoso para uno porque realmente no es tanto para mí, la familia que vive atrás. Ese es el problema.
This new park used to be a sheep ranch, but the livestock was removed from this section so the wildlife can come back. The Gauchos have been taking down the old fences, and we volunteered to help them in their work.
When we started, we had 400 miles of fencing to take down. That's a lot of fencing. Now it's down to less than 300 miles. Hopefully in a few years it'll all come down.
What are you watching? It's a documentary about Connie. It's been really great because it's been music and other language. I don't know when I'll see you. We need to try and get one next week.
Almost immediately, the Wanako and all the other wild animals come back and take over the territory. It's a small but satisfying restoration of the natural order of things.
See you tonight. In a few days, Makohe will head home to her family in Rapa Nui. Timmy will head back to Yosemite. And Keith will head north to look for surf in Canada. This journey was like going back in time. Like seeing North America before it became dominated by industry. But for these people, it's not some nostalgic trip into the past. It's their present. Their hard work and ability to live simply with the land is proof that we can learn from tradition. These people have shown me that if you love a place, you have a duty to protect it. And to love a place, you must know it first. This is one of the rivers the Gauchos have been trying to protect, and where one of 5 dams is supposed to go in. The plan is to have power flow from here to big cities hundreds of miles away. I'm certainly no expert,
But those fallen statues in Rapa Nui are seared in my memory, lying face down in the dirt. It's like they're trying to tell us something. I left home 6 months ago to follow in the footsteps of my heroes. A bit of surfing, some climbing, lots of unspoiled terrain. Pretty simple, really. Well, I got all that. But along the way, I've also begun to make connections that I never thought much about. In these far corners of the world, I'm seeing the effects of encroaching progress. And most of this has to do with overconsumption elsewhere. It's easy for us to blindly consume when we don't see the effect it has on other places.
The hardest thing in the world is to simplify your life. It's so easy to make it complex. What's important is leading an examined life, because most of the damage caused by humans is caused unintentionally, I think.
And in response to people saying you can't go back. So, well, what happens if you get to the cliff and you take one step forward, or you do a 180-degree turn and take one step forward? Which way are you going? And which is progress?
The solution may be for a lot of the world's problems is to turn around and take a forward step. You can't just keep trying to make a flawed system work.
My whole life, I've been drawn to open country. I always return home a little different. But I know now we can no longer take it for granted. When open country is gone, we will be gone with it.
One day, if you've been climbing all your life, you're going to get to your last climb.
I thought the trip was over, but Doug and Yvonne showed me this unclimbed peak on the edge of the new park that they tried to climb last year. They want to give it one more shot, and they've asked me to come along. What do you want to call the route?
Nothing. Climb it. Walk away. Doesn't matter anymore. Each of us in our own way got to do something. Save your soul, you know. Whatever that is.